Hi there, welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire. I'm glad you're here. So today I'm just taking you along as I create a bunch of different cards using one die set, mixed and matched with others I had on hand. I think it's a lot of fun and very rewarding to take one die set and use it in many ways. Now you may not have this particular die set, but I'm hoping this inspires you to find something you have and use it in as many ways as possible. It's a great way to get your creative juices flowing and get more value out of the products you have. I have a lot of ideas to share with you, and even Lila shares one in here too. So there's a little backstory about this video. About a year ago or so, Honeybee Stamps came out with this Paper Hugs stamp set and die. And I really liked the hands dies that you could make look like they're hugging something or holding hands. And I used it to mass produce a lot of cards for hospital staff during COVID. You can see one of the card examples here, and I will link to that video up here on the top right. Now, I thought it'd be fun to have a larger hand, so you could have larger hands holding hands or hugging or holding things. So I asked Melissa at Honeybee if she would consider doing that and check out this die set that she just released. It's called the Helping Hand die set. There's that large hand, a heart, little fingernails you can add, and a peace sign. I just feel like this is one of those basic die sets that you can use and mix and match with other things you have. Honeybee also came out with a coordinating stamp set that works really well with the Helping Hands dies. This is the High Five stamp set. Lots of great sentiments to match up with it. I actually only used this on one of today's cards because I really wanted to stretch those dies and use them creatively. So I started by die cutting a bunch of hands from different skin tones. I think it's fun that you can kind of personalize the card that you're making for someone. Now, I just went through my cardstock stash. If you're looking for good skin tones, the Memory Box Earth Neutral 6x6 paper pad has some great options, but also just look at the cardstock you already have. There are many that would work great for the skin tones for the hand die. Okay, let's get into making some examples. I'm first sharing just a few examples that really focus on the hands and using that as kind of the theme of the card, and then we'll get a little more creative and stretch that die into different uses. So let's start with this card here. I'm just going to show you the completed card because it's very simple. It's a 5x7 card, and I glued down hands of different skin tones along the background. I then added a border across there where I stamped my sentiment. And behind the border, I added a peach color heart that I covered with Tonic Aqua Shimmer Pen so it would sparkle. It's a simple design, but I really like all the different skin tones there. Now that stamp set for this one is an older one. This is one Honeybee stamps designed for Hero Arts in honor of 45 years of being in the stamping industry. I really liked this one. I've used it many times in videos, and I thought this sentiment worked great for this card. Here's another very simple one, and it uses the coordinating stamp set for the Helping Hands dies. Now, these cards at the beginning here are very simple. I will get a little more creative as we go. Just stay tuned for that. Okay, so for the background on this one, I use the Honeybee Garden Lattice background dies. You can buy these dies separately, but when you die cut them and layer them, you get really cool dimension. And I like to do that with white cardstock on a white note card, just for textured background. You can see how that adds a lot of interest to this simple card. I thought this card would be great for my friend in faith who is going through a really difficult time, just as a reminder that everything will be okay. I did add some Tonic Aqua Shimmer Pen to the globe and then some glossy accents to the little pink heart that I added. Okay, before we get creative with mix and matching different sets with the Helping Hand dies, I thought I'd show you the card that Lila made, and she did this all on her own, and I thought it was so creative. She took 2 hand die cuts and have them together so they're holding hands. She then added a glitter heart to the front center. She did add colorful fingernails too, and then a simple sentiment on the bottom from this older Hero Arts You Are Loved stamp set. This is a mini Slimline card, so it's about 3.5 by 6.25 inches, and I thought it was so well done. She's giving this one to her teacher, her virtual teacher from this last year, because they worked really hard together to make the year really strong. This card would be perfect for that. Okay, now it's time to get creative. What I did is I looked around in my stash at products that I've been wanting to use and figuring out ways to use them along with the Helping Hands die. In this case, I thought it'd be fun for the hand to hold flowers. Now this flower die is from Honeybee. It's a Coneflower die set. It's a really easy layering die set that is beautiful when put together. So I have all the pink pieces cut up there on the top, and then I die cut the center of the flower just from white cardstock because I couldn't find one in my stash that was just the right color. I have tape here that is holding those white die cuts as I add color to them with a marker. So if you can't find just the right color of cardstock for your project, you could always color white cardstock with marker or do some sort of ink blending on it. In this case, I just did a marker and gold and brown. This is a super easy layering die set. You just put the pieces together, they line up nicely. And I'm really thankful that companies are coming out with more layering die sets. I love die cutting, and I think the results are really fun when you have everything assembled. Now I knew I wanted to have a stem on this flower that the hand could hold. So to cut a stem, I just took a piece of green cardstock and I cut kind of at a slight arch. I then cut close to that, but a little bit over, to create a stem. And I can do this a few times from the same piece to create multiple stems. Next, I wanted to create the hand that's holding the flower. So this is a little tip. If you're using this hand die or any other die and you want to see the different ways you can fold it, I just have this test die cut here. Here I can kind of play around with the different ways to fold the fingers, the different ways to orient it, and this is just kind of my test die cut. Once I have a position I like, I take a fresh die cut and I fold it the same way. So this was really helpful for me throughout this video. Once I have all the fingers folded, I'm just going to use a little bit of adhesive to add this to my card. This is the new Simon Says Stamp Dot Runner. Now there are refills for this. This puts down tiny little dots that are easy to rub away if you change your mind. Now this will become permanent as it dries. I'm just using a little bit of it now to kind of temporarily hold things in place, and I'll later add more adhesive once I'm happy and sure of where I've put everything. Now for a long time, I've been trying a lot of different tape runners and have been struggling to find one that didn't mess up, like kind of get stuck and you lose some of the adhesive, and also one that has refills available. So this is one that Simon Says Stamp sent me quite a while ago because they knew I was on the hunt for a new adhesive, and they asked me to test it out. So I've been using this off screen for a while and have been very happy with it. So if you've been on the hunt for a new dot runner, I recommend this one, and they actually have a good introductory price at the time I put this video up, so that's worth checking out. And again, there are refills available, and I've never had it get stuck where like the tape runner in it gets messed up. So that's one of the perks of this one too. So I'm putting everything down with a little bit of that tape runner. Notice I can move things still because I just used a little bit, and it kind of has a temporary hold at first. Once I'm happy with it, I can lift all the pieces and put more of that adhesive behind it, or I can just squeeze a little liquid adhesive behind the pieces to hold it in place. For a sentiment, I used the Honeybee My Favorite Flower stamp set. I'm excited about this set because I have a lot of flower stamps and dies, and these sentiments match up well with flowers. Now I decided to stamp one of the greetings along the hand there. Notice I haven't glued the fingers down yet. I want to make sure that I don't fold them over too much, that I cover up my sentiment. Okay, now that I'm happy with where everything is placed, I can squeeze a little bit of adhesive under there to make sure it stays put as it dries. I'm using foam squares for dimension behind the folded fingers. However, I don't normally use foam tape or foam squares because I find it doesn't hold up well in the mail, but if you put them close together, it should be fine. Now I also wanted to add a hello sentiment. I used this in one of my previous videos too. It's the Honeybee Bitty Buzzwords stamp set, and there's a die set. The great thing about this is the size of the sentiments, but also the shadow die in the die set will cut out the stamped word or the word in the die set, so you can use them together or separately easily. I just used the hello die cut it from black cardstock, and I'm gluing it right above our stamped sentiment. If you're looking for a good mix of sentiment dies and stamps, that Bitty Buzzwords is definitely a good option, and I use it again in an upcoming video too. Okay, so now I'm putting glossy accents on the fingernails that I added, and here is our final card. The overall size of this is about 3 1/4 by 6 1/4, and I'm using a mini Slimline envelope for that, and I'll link to those below. By the way, I forgot to mention the background there. That is the Photoplay number 6 Dots Die. It's a mini Slimline background die, and I just thought it was a great way to add a little interest to the background. You may have noticed that I made multiple flowers earlier when I was assembling those flower die cuts. Well, that's so I could make additional cards. This one has 2 flowers in the hand, and this is a full-size Slimline card. The overall size of this is about 3.5 by 8.5 inches, or close to that, and it fits in a Slimline envelope again, which I'll link to below. I like that this card looks very involved, but once you do all of your die cutting, it comes together super fast. That's one of the nice things about die cutting. You may have noticed that on this white note card, I did a background die cut in white also for some texture. It's the Crafty Meraki Plaid Slimline die, which I'll use again later in this video. They have a lot of great Slimline die options if you're interested in checking them out. And for sentiment, I use the Honeybee Love You Bunches stamp set. I also use sentiments from this throughout this video. I really like the look of the flowers in the hands on our last cards, but those are really big flowers. If you don't have a big flower die cut, you can also use smaller flower die cuts, as I do in these next 2 examples. I was also excited because I dug into my extras drawer and I found these 2 white die cuts that were made with the Honeybee flower cover plates. There's one that cuts open flowers and one that does pierce flowers, and layered together, they really look cool. I've used this set before in a video, and I must have had leftovers that I ended up putting in my extras drawer. Along with this, I used the Greenery Forget-Me-Nots die set. It's a flower die set with small little dies, fun to arrange with lots of details, and I've been wanting to use them, so this was a good reason. So I used those layered background die cuts in white and added it to a 4.25 by 5.5 inch white note card. I again have a hand die cut where I folded the fingers to hold a bunch of those Forget-Me-Not flowers. This was one of those where I just took some cardstock scraps, did some die cutting, and then had lots of flowers to assemble. I also added a white pearl to the center of each flower. And once again, I used the Honeybee Stamps Love You Bunches stamp set for a sentiment. I like that there are coordinating dies available to cut out the sentiments. Here is another one where I used the same Forget-Me-Nots die set from the Greenery, but this time I left the hand open, so it kind of looks like you're giving someone these flowers. I used the flower sentiment stamp set that I showed you earlier, stamped that greeting, and then used the coordinating die to cut it out. One of the things I really like about Honeybee products is that they have dies to cut out even their sentiments. So the little sentiments in this stamp set, they have coordinating dies available, which I think is a huge plus if you don't like to fussy cut things. And for example, on this card, there really wasn't a smooth spot to stamp a sentiment, so I could add it as a die cut. All right, let's do another example. This is another Slimline card, so it's a taller one, but this time the hand is holding a balloon, and I think this one's my favorite. I use the Honeybee Balloon Border die set. This is an older one, and I use this to create a large balloon at the top. If you don't have a die set like this, you could also use a large circle die and then cut a little piece at the bottom for the knot on the balloon. Well, I used the border die and cut it from white cardstock, and I'm gluing it to the top of my Slimline card here. You can see I've already added a plaid background die cut from that Crafty Meraki die that I showed you earlier. So once I have this glued on, I'm going to add another white die cut. All I'm doing here is building dimension. You do not need to do this, but I'm telling you, adding dimension to a card really makes a big difference in the overall look in the end. For the top layer of the balloon, I used Simon Says Stamp Rainbow Holographic Cardstock. You can see the full piece over there on the left. I cut from an area that is like pink, purple, and blue, and I'm gluing that on top of our stacked white die cuts. And again, I'll trim off the excess. This holographic cardstock is really fun to die cut from, and it really catches the light nicely and adds a lot of interest very simply. Okay, now underneath the knot of the balloon, I'm hooking some silver string here. This is actually a silver cording I've had forever, and I'm just tying it into a double knot. If it feels like your string or cord that you're using might come undone, you can put a little liquid adhesive on the knot just to make sure it stays. Now here I have a hand where I have folded the fingers, and I'm gluing that towards the bottom of the card, and I'll make it so that the string goes down into the hand. I also have a happy birthday die cut I'll glue in the middle. I'll show you what that's from in a moment. Now here I have some little foam squares I'm putting behind the folded fingers, and I'll wrap those around that string. I want the string to be kind of loose on the balloon. I thought that added to the character of the card, and this foam tape is great at just holding this here. If you really want to be certain it stays put, you can always squeeze a little bit of liquid adhesive under there. I also want to make sure that string in the middle doesn't get caught on anything, so I have our happy birthday die cut. I'll put adhesive on the back of that and place that over the string, and that will also hold it down and in place. So here's a look at the completed card. It's about 3.5 by 8.5 inches, so it'll fit into a Slimline card, and I'll link to my favorite source for those below. Now you can see that plaid textured die cut in the background really makes a big difference on this simple card design. This is one of those cards that you can mass produce and change the greeting in the center. You could put congratulations, miss you, anything you want. But I thought it would be great for a birthday card for one of my friends that has a birthday coming up. Now that happy birthday sentiment is from this new Honeybee Stamps Miss You Big Time stamp set and coordinating die set. As I mentioned, Honeybee is really good about having coordinating dies to cut out their sentiments, and check that out. You can cut out all of those sentiments nice and tight and even build up new messages. This will definitely be on my favorites list for this year. Okay, let's go on to another example. This time I wanted to do I love you with the hand and have it hold a rainbow. If you're looking for a good rainbow die, I recommend the My Favorite Things Magical Rainbow Die Set. This cuts the arches and a solid piece to glue the arches on, so it's easy to handle after they've been glued together. It's not separate pieces. So I have a hand here where I'm kind of practicing how I'm going to make the I love you sign. I want to make sure I get it right, and that is always a helpful thing to do. If you want to add some dimension behind them, remember you can glue multiple die cuts together so it holds up through the mail even better. Okay, so I have a note card here, 4.25 by 5.5 inches, where I'm adding our little hand and then the rainbow along with the word color. This is the Honeybee color stamp set, and there is a coordinating die set. Check out the die set. It stands alone also. There's the word, the shadow, and then a pierced edge shadow die to go around that. So you can do lots of layering. I didn't do the pierced edge shadow die, I just did the 2 smaller die cuts. I also stamped you in my world next to the word color, and that's from the stamp set I just showed you. I added fingernails with a little tonic aqua shimmer pen and glossy accents so they would shine. This one is probably the one I'm going to go back and make many of. Those rainbows come together quickly, and it's great to send to just about anyone. By the way, the background on that is with the Fluttering Hearts dies from Honeybee. You can buy these separately, but you can use them together for a really cool layered look. I've used this many times in videos, and again, I was able to find some extra white die cuts in my extras drawer. Once again, you know me, I made multiple rainbows while I was making the one, and I thought I would put one of these rainbows onto a heart. So I assembled the rainbow using the rainbow die set as before, and once I have it assembled, I'm using a heart to cut that rainbow down a bit, so it looks like the heart or the rainbow is inside of the heart. So there I have the piece to glue on top. So all I have to do is glue that onto heart die cuts. I once again used the Fluttering Hearts background dies with white cardstock onto a 4.25 by 5.5 inch white note card. And for the sentiment, I used the Honeybee Inside Birthday Sentiment stamp set. Remember I said that Honeybee is good about having coordinating die sets even for their sentiment sets? Well, I was able to stamp Sending Love to You from Us, and then I used the coordinating die to cut it out. Then I trimmed that message down to be just Sending Love, so that I could add a small sentiment right on the rainbow without covering it up too much. I did end up switching to a holographic cardstock for the heart, so I have that behind the rainbow. I just felt like it added some shine since I didn't put any additional embellishments on it. You can see the white on white background that we have there with the die cutting and the piercing, which adds even more interest. Now remember, with this helping hand die, you can put pretty much anything in the hand. Well, I decided to dig in my little extras drawer once again and found these crayons. These crayons I created leftover from a video that I did in the past using a Concord & Ninth Color Me Happy die set. I'll link to that video on the top right if you want to check it out. Well, I don't want those to go to waste, so I thought it'd be fun to put a few of the crayons in the hand. So look through your extras. Keep those little pieces. You never know when you can combine them with something else for a future card. Now over there on the left, I have the Honeybee Stamps Crafty stamp set and the Crafty word die set. I thought that would work well with the crayons. And again, those two are sold separately but work well together too. So I did the Crafty die cut from black and the shadow from white. And then I white heat embossed hugs on a piece of black cardstock and added that right to the Y of the Crafty. You can also see I used the Honeybee Garden Lattice dies in white cardstock on our background, along with a white note card that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I just folded the thumb to make it look like it's kind of holding those crayons in place. A very fast card to come together because I already had those pieces left over from a previous crafty session. Now, if you're looking for some fun things to color that are crafty, this is the new Honeybee Let's Get Crafty stamp set. There are coordinating dies available, and I thought it would work great with the helping hand die. I didn't have time to make any cards with this set, but just wanted to share with you in case you were looking for some fun options. Okay, now as card makers, we're always giving people cards, right? So I thought I'd create that scene on the card using the helping hand die. So I dug through my stash and I found this My Favorite Things mini mail die set. It creates a little envelope and also pieces that you can put inside of the envelope. I just used the envelope die itself. I cut that from white cardstock, folded it up, and glued it together so I could have this in the hand with a mini card that will go inside. So I assembled all this onto a card, and I also stamped a greeting, scattered some little hearts and gemstones. I did not seal the envelope closed so that when the person takes this out of the big envelope, that little envelope kind of pops open and they'll be able to see that there is a card inside. So when you reach into that envelope, you'll see there's a little pink note card where I glued a silver glitter heart on the front and stamped Missing You. Then when you open it up, I'll have a little personal message inside of there, as well as inside of the big card. I just thought this was a fun way to make something a little special using this helping hand die. By the way, for the Sending Paper Hugs sentiment, I used 2 stamp sets together to get something new. On the left is the Honeybee Love Enclosed stamp set where I got paper hugs, and I got the word sending from the Crafty stamp set over on the right. For the background on this one, I used a really great new die set from W+9. This is the Postage Layer die set. This is one of those that you can use over and over again, and I love that the big one is for a 5x7 card. I like that there are so many size options here, and you can do a faux postage technique with it too. And for the little Missing You that I stamped on that little card inside of the envelope, it's the Simon Says Stamp Springbird stamp set, which I use a lot, and I like the small sentiments included. Okay, my last card is super simple, but I feel like it's really powerful and meaningful in the greeting that it has. Now for this one, I used those Fluttering Heart background dies, and I cut them from 2 shades of peach cardstock and glued those together onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. A very easy and fast way to make a base for a card. I then used the Pocket Full of Happiness Stitched Hearts die set. This has wide hearts, which I really like, and it fit a sentiment nicely from the Honeybee Love You Bunches stamp set that I showed you earlier. I put 2 hands together so they're kind of locked together, and I'm gluing those onto the card, and then I can glue my heart on top of that. I did die cut 3 hearts and glued those together so it would really stand out on this simple card. This is one of those times, again, where I think the sentiment and what it says is so much more important than what's on the card, so simple is best. And again, here is the Honeybee Stamps Love You Bunches stamp set where I got that sentiment. A lot of good ones in this set. Now there was another card idea that I ran out of time to do, but I wanted to share with you. You could take hands and make it look like it's kind of hugging or holding your card. This is a 5x7 card, and you could glue these little hands so they kind of wrap around it. So let me just show you briefly. You just put glue on this folded part of the wrist and glue one to one side of the card and one to the other. You could do whatever size card that you want. And when the recipient gets it, they just open the hands and then they can open the card. And you can decorate this however you want. You can even make the fingers kind of interlace. Lots of ways you can do this. So I didn't have time to pull that together into a card, but did want to share the idea. Again, there are so many ways you can use these helping hand dies. So I hope this video inspires you to find a really useful die set like this hand die and think of all the ways you can use them creatively along with other products you have. I think that's a great way to really stretch your supplies. But if you are interested in looking at the products I use today, they're linked below in my YouTube description. You can also go to my blog where I have it so that you can bookmark and save card ideas there for future reference. If you want to see the the videos that I recommended in this one, they're linked here in the middle. I thank you for spending this time with me. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.